and get started here with introductions. My name is Garrett Hawkins. I'm Communications Director at the IIB. Thank you all for joining us and good morning. Today we have a 1-hour member webinar with Brown & Brown about the unique issues in the health insurance marketplace faced by FBOs. We're going to hear from several experts who will discuss how to provide employees with a comprehensive health insurance plan while mitigating the rising costs, including Dan Pollock, who is Senior Vice President of the Global Benefits Division at Brown & Brown of Garden City, Serge Sondak, who is President and CEO of Glorin Consulting, Kenneth Weinstein, who is a Certified Employee Benefit Specialist and Vice President of the Employee Benefits Division at Brown & Brown of Garden City, and Justin Remnick, Head of Government Programs at Aetna International. They're going to cover the recent trends in the health insurance marketplace and the factors that contribute towards rising costs, health insurance options currently available to the FBO community in the domestic marketplace, and the availability of global health insurance plans for small and medium FBOs, among other issues. And they're also going to take questions from the audience at the end of the presentation. So I'd just encourage you maybe to write those down to keep them in mind for the end of the deck. Dan, Serge, Kenneth, Justin, before we begin, I really just want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. We're very excited to hear from you on this important topic. And thank you very much to Brown & Brown for supporting the IIB as a gold level member. With that, I'll hand it over to Serge to take it away.
Thank you, Garrett. Thank you to the IIB, to Beth Zork and the IIB for allowing us to present. As many of you might know, I have previously served on the board of the IIB for 4 years, and I remember them well. The IIB does a lot of great work for the foreign banking industry, and I was happy to be in that industry throughout my 35-year banking career. So very pleased to be here, very pleased to represent, be independent consultant and strategic advisor to Brown & Brown, top 6 insurance broker in the US. And the topic today, I think, is an interesting topic because many of you GMs whom I know and senior management of the foreign banking industry are currently struggling with a lot of, how to manage operational costs, how to mitigate operational costs, and also how to manage and mitigate healthcare benefit costs, which is certainly a rising cost for many of you. And so hopefully the seminar will give you the awareness and some of the issues that are going on in the industry, including, higher inflation costs and higher medical costs. So I think it's a very interesting topic. I think obviously for you GMs and senior management, there's a lot of challenges and issues, not just operational cost and compliance risk and regulatory risk, but this certainly is an added element that, you might not have focused on, but hopefully it'll get your attention. And clearly managing these costs as well as creating a good plan design is also critical for maintaining good talent and motivating your staff. So with that said, I'm happy to turn it over to my good friend and colleague, Dan Pollock of Brown & Brown. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Serge, for that introduction, and welcome everybody to today's webinar, which we believe will be very informative and compact. So I'm going to start with a review of the agenda. Obviously, here is just a list of today's presenters in more detail. Myself, Senior Vice President, Global Benefits Division for Brown & Brown. My colleague, Ken Weinstein, Vice President of the Employee Benefits Division for the Service Division. And obviously, Serge, who you just heard from, and Mr. Justin Remnick, Director for Aetna International. And here's the agenda for today. These are the key 6 topics we're going to cover. Brief introduction to Brown & Brown as a company. And then we'll get into the key drivers that contribute towards rising healthcare costs. After that, we'll hit on what are the current available options that you see now in the market space as far as domestic marketplace options. We'll touch on global health insurance plans and their availability to the FBO community. And then, at Brown & Brown, we work with several global health insurers, but one of our premier partners is Aetna International. And we've been working with them for over 20 plus years. So we're very happy to have Mr. Justin Remnick, a global director of their global division, He'll speak, and then we'll have closing remarks, and certainly, as Garrett mentioned, open it up to Q&A. Just to start as an overview for Brown & Brown, we are ranked 7th in the world as an insurance broker. Obviously, $4.3 billion in revenues, and we have about 16,000 teammates in over 500 plus work locations worldwide. Brown & Brown is a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange, and I believe since September 2021, we are in the S&P 500 index. One key differentiator, I think, for Brown & Brown is while we are a very large organization, we take a very decentralized approach. So we allow our local teams, they're empowered to make decisions that best support our customers here on a local level, but we have the key backing of the headquarters and the parent company of Brown & Brown, which again is headquartered, of course, in Florida, Daytona Beach. And then just furthermore here, just gives you an idea. Serge also mentioned 7th largest broker in the world, 6th largest in the US. We have 260 US office locations, and obviously these other countries where we are represented. Now I'm going to turn the presentation over to my colleague Ken Weinstein, again, who's the Vice President of the Benefit Service Division for both our domestic and global practices. And Ken's going to take you through some of the key drivers that we feel are, contributing towards rising healthcare costs. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, everybody. As you know, healthcare costs are only second only to wages and overall employee compensation. Unmanaged growth of healthcare costs can have an impact on your bottom line profitability. Last year, the Wall Street Journal cited major consulting firms estimating healthcare costs to rise 6.5% in 2024, this year. This is after lower inflation because of the pandemic mitigating cost increase because of low utilization. So we're back to more normal times of medical utilization. One of the factors they cited for 2024 was overall inflation, which we all know about, and hospitals demanding higher reimbursement rates as major factors. For the upcoming year, 2025, Price Waterhouse Health Research Institute is estimating an 8% increase in group coverage premiums, citing multiple factors such as treatment for obesity and other chronic conditions, as well as new gene therapies. You can see the high-priced medications being advertised heavily on TV and print media. One of the lasting effects of the pandemic is the increase in behavioral health utilization. Thank you, Dan. As an example of the rise in healthcare costs and new gene therapies, there are a lot of breakthroughs. People are living longer. We know longevity is going up, but there's a price to be paid in the medications that are being discovered. And basically, as an example, Vertex and Cassavy has come out with sickle cell anemia medications that are big breakthroughs. However, the costs are between $2 million and $3 million for this treatment. So what can you do? Most of the members here are in one of these domestic marketplace options, either small group or large group. In 2010, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, was passed. This mandates that states regulate small groups differently than large groups. All states, except New York and California, restrict employers under 50 employees to the small group marketplace. However, New York and California, any groups under 100 are relegated to the small group market. The restrictions placed upon the small group market is that rates are determined based upon the pool of customers in a specific geographic area. All companies are offered identical rates, even though the group may have favorable demographics and claims experience. Premiums are based upon the plan design chosen, irrespective of the risk your group actually presents to the carrier. Some groups do find lower rates being part of a professional employment organization. However, that limits your corporation into only the PEO offerings, which can increase costs. on the administration side. This also requires a co-employment agreement to be signed. So basically, the small group marketplace, if you're in it, basically based upon Obamacare and the laws, federal laws, you cannot use your actual favorable claims experience and/or demographics to get lower rates. In the large group market, if you're over 100 employees in New York or 50 elsewhere, the carriers are allowed to price coverage based upon claims experience and demographics. However, this market has very few claims incurred outside the US, where costs are generally lower. This is because coverage outside the US is typically limited to urgent emergency care only under a domestic plan.
All right, thank you very much, Ken, for your contribution. And now to the next slide, which we hope will be of interest here, I'm going to lead, which is to discuss global health insurance plans. It is not commonly known that foreign banks, or FBOs, with offices here in the US, mainly in New York, Washington, DC, what have you, may also be eligible for a global health plan. Here at Brown & Brown, our global benefits division, which I lead, we have over 20 years experience operating in this field. We currently represent over 50 international clients, and our clientele includes international banks, both government and privately owned, as well as other international businesses with operations here in the US. In addition, we represent several permanent missions to the UN, United Nations, along with embassies and consulates across the country. What's unique about a global health plan is it, unlike, as Ken was alluding to earlier, when you're in a community rated plan, it's no ability to customize benefits, right? It's take it or leave it. Here on a global plan, even if you're a small group, we can have customized benefits, which can include minimal to no in-network cost sharing. So we can have a very rich plan design with minimal to no co-payments. And we find that when we deliver that type of plan, there's a very high level of employee satisfaction, which helps to lead towards high, we think, levels of employee retention overall. In addition, this plan will provide full coverage, 100% coverage outside the US, whether you're traveling for business or personal. So any employee or dependent who's covered will have full 100% access to medical care overseas. And a lot of the carriers that we partner with actually have, not saying networks, but relationships where they'll do a guarantee of payment to a provider overseas. The global carriers provide 24/7 customer service, which is really nice. Typically, a domestic plan you might see today is just 9 to 5 service. Here it's 24/7 because they operate globally, and multilingual language. So there usually is about 15 different languages spoken on site. Other benefits are included: repatriation, emergency evacuation, if an issue occurs overseas, and dental and vision can be bundled together. The dental plans that we can provide under a global policy are very attractive. We can go sometimes usually $3,000 or up to $5,000 benefit max, and for vision, generally up to $500 towards the purchase of eyeglasses or contact lenses. So generally, it's a very popular feature that the employees enjoy. But the most important thing is this is bundled together. So now you're looking at ease of administration. What we'd like to say in that regard is that there's a streamline. So you'd have one invoice per month, one ID card if you choose for medical, dental, vision. But just in mind, dental is optional, as is vision. I apologize, vision is built into the medical rate, so it's not a separate charge as well. Now, to the next slide, how to qualify for a plan, right? There are certain requirements you must meet, and this slide will detail that. And to qualify for a global health plan, you have to have an international headquarters or parent company that's domiciled outside the US, right? So for example, Brown & Brown, the company I represent, I mentioned we have 16,000 employees. Unfortunately, we do not qualify for this plan because we're domiciled here in the US. We're a US company. If Brown & Brown has offices overseas, which we do, we could provide this type of plan to our outbound employees overseas, but not here in the US. But if you're an international based company or bank, an FBO, and you have a headquarters outside the US, we could cover your US locations under this plan potentially. you have to have at least 51 or more employees worldwide, with a minimal of at least 2 employees enrolling on a plan. So we can do a small group, and we can go as high as up to several thousand. Eligible employees must be on US payroll. And of course, the plan will cover both your local staff, your locally recruited staff here in the US, and any of your non-US citizen or inpat staff that you bring on overseas to come here on a work assignment. The rates for a global health plan are typically competitive in price when we compare them to the domestic health plans. Now, obviously, we're offering enhanced benefits, but the reason this is because global health plans factor in their worldwide block of business when determining rates, amongst other factors as well, such as demographics. The cost to deliver medical care is generally lower outside the US, and also for those groups that are outbound, US companies or inbound coming in, the demographics tend to be a little bit more favorable. You tend to see a little bit younger of a population that tends to take on a travel assignment overseas. Additionally, inpat, which are inbound employees who reside here in the US on a work assignment, may return home for care if they incur a serious medical condition. We have seen that happen over the years. If sometimes they prefer just to go home, whether that's covered by our carrier, the claim overseas is obviously less, or they seek care through their home universal healthcare system, depending on the country they reside in. With that said, I'm now going to turn it over to my friend and colleague, director from Aetna International, one of our key partners, Justin Remnick, and he's going to provide a little more in-depth detail regarding an international health plan. So Justin, thank you, and take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan. First, I want to say thank you to Brown & Brown and IIB for giving us this opportunity here today. As Dan mentioned, my name is Justin Remnick. I'm an executive director and segment lead here in Aetna International. And what I want to take everybody through today is kind of, how Aetna views this market. I certainly don't mean this to sound salesy. That's not the intent. Here at Aetna International, I know Brown & Brown, can attest to this. I really focus on, education first, and making sure that individuals understand how the market works, things they should be considering. And from there, if Aetna is the right choice, great, right? We're confident in our capabilities, but we want you to be as well. So with that said, I'll jump in here. At International, we believe that healthcare happens everywhere, right? Oftentimes our individual needs to have access to care don't always come at the most convenient times or locations, right? So with this in mind, what I'd really like to talk to you about today is how Aetna International as a single carrier solution can help provide peace of mind, to your employees that are here in the US or wherever life might take them. So Dan, if we can just stay on this slide here for 1 second. Diving a little deeper, into this, Aetna/Aetna International, one carrier model. I think most of the time 2 is better than 1, right? But when it comes to paperwork, contacts, contracts, 1 is usually better, and it is a lot easier to manage. Many of our customers here at Aetna International have already benefited from a consistent domestic and Aetna International plan design with simpler administration, having 1 proposal, 1 contract, 1 implementation, 1 team to work with throughout the entirety of the plan administration. Our members benefit from this as well, right? Members have just 1 ID card. Dan touched on that. This offers an easier experience for them when receiving care. They benefit from a more consistent support model, regardless of where they are receiving care. And because it's 1 plan, the care they receive in and out of the US all works toward the same deductible and co-insurance, which ultimately saves employees money here. So Dan, if we can go to the next slide. So how does it all work? What does it all mean? And while I don't have a ton of time today to go into a lot of details here, let's just take a real quick look. Inside the US, members get access to an extensive national network of providers. They get access to first dollar benefits through no member cost sharing, at CVS Minute Clinic locations. They get access to CVS Health virtual primary care, which personally I can tell you for me and my family, I have 4 kids. It's a tremendous convenience for us, right? I don't have to drag my kids into the doctor's office. It's also been a huge time saver for my family as well. Outside the US, as Dan mentioned, there's no member cost share for international medical, dental, or vision coverage. So if you have an employee that is living and working here in the US on an assignment, but they return home for care, or if you have an employee that lives in the US and goes on vacation, they can do so with peace of mind and knowing that they're not only supported by a global network of providers, but they can access those providers without coming out of pocket. Members also get to take advantage of pre-trip planning consultations. So as we think about this, and we don't think about it often, but certain prescription drugs that are legal in one country are not legal in another. And before an employee travels, having the peace of mind knowing that their prescriptions are not going to be an issue for them as they step off of a plane is extremely important. So with that said, how does it all tie together? Members benefit from one administration platform for in and out of the US care. Members benefit from one 24/7 service team. And in my mind, most importantly, they benefit from one clinical care experience, right? This ensures that there is continuity in the care that they are receiving from an in US and out of US perspective. So Dan, if we can go to the next slide. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but the short story here is that your benefits are only as good as the network that they're on. And our network solutions have you covered here. They also encourage your employees to use doctors and hospitals that are recognized for quality and efficiency, right? If we think about how we shop for anything today, right? If we're going to go buy a TV, football season starting, right? I know Dan's going to want to watch his Jets. So if we go to shop for a TV here in the US, we compare prices, right? We want employees, we want our members to do the same thing when they are shopping for their healthcare experience and for services that they need. When they do this, it results in smarter, more thoughtful choices being made about their care and ultimately reduces costs for the plan. So as you can see here, we have over 274,000 primary care doctors. We have over 559,000 specialists, over 1 million ancillary providers and non-physician specialists. This is in addition to the over 900 MinuteClinic locations in our CVS stores across the country. The one thing that is unique to Aetna, and this is maybe where I will sound maybe a little salesy, is a lot of carriers can be part of your healthcare journey at Aetna. Being a CVS health company, we are a destination. So if you want to receive care, you can come to a CVS MinuteClinic location and get the care that you need. So Dan, if you want to jump to the next slide here. So what happens if an employee travels abroad or returns home from an assignment? Here's where our global network has you covered. Aetna Abroad is our global network, and it's a curated ecosystem of trusted regional network providers. And it's really made up between our own provider contracts and our direct global partnership that we have with Allianz. Aetna Abroad ensures that our members have access to pre-screened doctors and hospitals around the world. So looking at the map, that's here on the screen, the green dots represent our network partner offices. The orange dot represent our local support resources, which include services like network representatives, clinical support, provider services, and even fraud, waste, and abuse investigative teams, right? This is a really key feature to make sure that costs are being contained and that costs are appropriate within a program. Having a investigative team that really kind of focuses on waste and abuse. And, we have over 20, let's say it's right around 28 people globally that focus in just on that. So as you can see here, we have direct pay providers in 200 plus countries and territories. We offer access to over 320,000 doctors and hospitals. And then having a one carrier solution, it really also gives you the comfort in knowing that you're offering employees a compliant plan solution and coverage in accordance with local laws and regulations here as well. So Dan, go ahead if you go to the next slide. So we talked about the power of a one carrier solution here in the US and abroad. We talked about network access and the importance of a broad network. Equally as important is surrounding your members with benefits that meet their needs, right? So from comprehensive medical plans, well-being resources and care management, to pharmacy benefits, ensuring that employees can get access to the medications they need no matter where they are in the world, to telehealth and other digital resources that provide anytime, anywhere access to medical care and mental health support all over the world. These are just a few examples of what a successful complete benefit package, really should entail, and the things that you should be thinking about. So go ahead to the next slide, Dan. And lastly, before I wrap up on the next slide here, it's really important to note that everybody consumes healthcare differently. With this in mind, it's important that members have access to the care that they need, the way they want it, when they want it. Our solutions run the gamut from human touch to self-servicing digital tools. Having those capabilities and that wide range of access to care really helps ensure that individuals do not delay care, right? If somebody does not want to go see somebody and that's the only option, oftentimes they don't, unless it's something really, really important, or catastrophic to them, they have to deal with immediately. They'll often put care off. And we don't want to see that, because ultimately that contributes to higher costs in care in the long run. One of the things that we're actually doing at Aetna now is we are taking advantage of AI. And if Dan Pollock goes to the doctor, we know that Dan goes to the doctor and his appointments tend to be at night. We know that when Dan goes to the doctor, he tends to go see somebody in person, or we know that he tends to utilize a virtual care model more. So when it comes time for us to make care recommendations for Dan, we know those things. And when we make a care recommendation for Dan, we can say, hey, Dan, here's a provider that matches some of the criteria of his usage and behaviors, right? So there's some really cool things that we can do to really help people get better engaged with their healthcare. So go ahead to the next slide, Dan. And, I'll wrap things up with this. Together with Brown, we understand the importance of a seamless member experience. And we really strive to deliver that to our customers. At the end of the day, the only healthcare experience that matters is the one that you provide to your people, right? This is why we push ourselves continually to evolve and surround you, with the people and resources that you need to navigate the complexities of healthcare today, right? It's confusing. It's confusing for us, even more so for our members, right? So with that said, that's going to wrap things up, for me, Dan, I'll turn things back over to you, but, again, thank you all for spending some time with us here this morning.
Thank you so much, Justin. I appreciate it. And I actually do tend to visit doctors in the evening, but before midnight. So that's okay. But that is the technology. But that's wonderful. And I just want to make, before I quickly toss it over to Garrett, I just wanted to make a quick comment, which is from our experience at Brown & Brown with our Aetna International customers. We all love, since CVS obviously acquired Aetna several years back. They all appreciate the relationship with CVS Pharmacy and the Minute Clinic. So for those clients that do have an office copay, whether it's whatever it is, having that waive to visit a Minute Clinic is a nice feature for Aetna International customers that we appreciate. So thank you for touching on that as well. And Garrett, thank you as well for everything, but go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, Serge, Justin, and Kenneth. That was a great, fascinating presentation, filled with information. And so I just encourage everyone listening in now to ask your questions and to get things kicked off. It looks like we have one here in the chat function, so I can just read it. For global plans, do the employee population need to be visa holders, or does this plan cover the majority of employees if they're U.S. citizens?
Okay, hi, that is a great question. So it's interesting that currently today at Brown & Brown, we work closely with roughly 4 different global health insurance carriers. Each one of those companies might have different requirements. So some might require no more than 50% of your population to be a U.S. citizen. Another might say no more than 15%. But then we also have another that we could go up to 90% per se. So it depends upon the carriers. So for our book of business, we do have some clients, including banks, that are vast majority are US citizens, but they're still an international bank, and we can still qualify them for a program. And Aetna is just to give a plug to Aetna, they're very accommodating in that regard. Thank you.
Dan, can I ask a question for the group here as they, think of the issues? Can you
Sure.
maybe give an example of when you have designed or enhanced a plan design for some of the banks or institutional clients that you had, have you been able to also increase special benefits, whether they're IVF or EAP or therapy or other special medical things that previously the bank or the institution did not have? Could you maybe, without giving names, give some examples at some of the plan design enhancements that you've finalized over the last 1 to 2 years?
And
That's
Dan, before you answer, let me,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just jump in and say, to our audience, please drop your questions in the chat. And Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
Garrett, thank you so much. Serge, great question as well. Thank you very much. The answer is yes. Just to give a recent example, we just recently placed a international bank with a global carrier, and that program includes full coverage. Usually it's 5 cycles of IVF. So yes, IVF is built into the program based upon how the contract, where the state in which the contract's domiciled. So for the global health plans, including Aetna and other carriers like Cigna, they typically domicile their contract in the state of Delaware. Delaware is a very state that offers very rich benefits. Contract situs there have very rich benefits. So IVF is covered up to 5 cycles. In addition, the global health plans we provide will offer physical therapy, outpatient physical therapy covered unlimited visits, chiropractic care, unlimited visits, acupuncture care. There's a lot of value-added additional benefits built into the program. It's a very generous, rich plan design. Regardless if you have a deductible, a copay, or not, the benefits are all going to be the same, pretty much. So yeah, and then you mentioned employee assistance program. Some of the carriers, including Aetna and others, include that at least maybe 5 sessions are built in where you can call customer service and be transferred right to a behavioral therapist. And that's built in as well. So there's a lot of benefits, and absolutely, Serge, that would be covered. Garrett, I see another question on the chat.
Yes, we do have a couple more. The next one is, how do you manage the reporting for insurance since it's different in the States than abroad?
Dan, I will handle that one.
Thank you, Ken.
So basically, all the plans are ERISA plans, and there is reporting based that changes depending upon the size of the plan. If you do have to follow what's called 5500s, we deliver them to you signature ready. So we support your reporting. And there may be some difference, excuse me, depending upon the state's reporting, and we'd have to find out what state you're in. But in general, you don't have to report ERISA unless you have 100 enrollees. But if you do have that, we do make sure you're in compliance. We do prepare the forms for you, and all you have to do is sign them and send them in. We also make sure you're in compliance for all other legislation, whether it be state and or federal legislation. So we're constantly giving updates as things change and ensuring that all our clients are in compliance, which is just part and parcel of our service model.
Okay, thank you, Ken. And I just want to chime in and also say, although we are offering you a global health plan, please note these plans, these global plans, are fully compliant with the Affordable Care Act, ACA. So they comply with all the mandated benefits, unlimited, no exclusion for pre-existing medical conditions, preventative care, children covered to age 26. So again, a fully compliant plan. I see another question which says, what would copay, deductible, and coinsurance be? Great question. The answer is whatever you'd prefer. We have, whether you're under 100, let's say you have 10 employees, or you have 300 or 500. We could design a plan design that best meets your needs. So what I typically like to do, if I'm submitting a proposal to an FBO, we'll offer a plan design that kind of matches what you have now, and then show you a couple of enhanced options that have lower co-payments that are more attractive to see if we could give you that, as well as still be competitive on price. Doesn't happen every time, but certainly that's the approach. We have flexibility.
All right. Are there any final questions from the audience here? Just please drop those in the chat. If you have them now, I'll give it a couple more seconds just to make sure that we've answered the outstanding questions here.
Garrett, as people maybe think of one or two more questions to ask, I just wanted to bring up an issue that I think the FBOs, the senior management of the FBOs are certainly looking at, which is how to manage these costs and mitigate these healthcare benefit costs. So I'll ask Dan a question, since my friends of the FBO know me well. Dan, maybe give some examples, obviously without disclosing names, as during the last, let's say, 1 to 2 years, where you've renegotiated some healthcare benefit plans that were enhanced, right? And what were some of the savings that were generated for the FBO or the bank or the institutional client, just to give a range of percentages, if you would, to give them a kind of an idea of what potential cost savings could be.
Great. Thank you, Serge. Yeah, just on two, I'll be specific, 2 recent banks and 1 international European company operating in the US. The range of savings we were able to provide for these particular 3 clients, which are all recent clients, was in the range of 5 to 15% in savings. And on each plan design we proposed, they had additional benefit features and usually lower co-payments or deductibles, so enhanced benefits overall. But 5 to 15% is generally the range we like to say.
Dan, if I may add, addition to that, for renewals, we're able to negotiate based upon the bank's claim history. They're not just put into a pool and given the same increase as everybody. So we're quite often getting rate passes or low increases, not always, of course, but quite often, which is not really available in the small group marketplace. You can't get a 0% in the small group market. If you have good experience, we're gonna fight to get you as low a rate increase as possible. And we're able to do that in the international group, which you cannot do in the small group marketplace.
Kenny, in closing, Garrett, I'm going to make a final comment. That's a great point. In addition, there's other components included. For example, if the bank has an office, a secondary office outside of New York, we are sometimes able to negotiate a premium credit, which is a one-time only component, but that's an incentive to come on. But it's specific to renewals. In closing here again, I've been operating with Ken together, our global benefits division, for almost 20 years. And we've had clients like FBOs or permanent missions that have been in a global plan for that amount of time. So the carriers are looking for a long-term partnership. If Justin were to speak, he would say the same. They're not looking to take you on for a year and increase your 50%. They're looking for a long-term partnership. That's the only way they maintain a successful relationship with everyone. So we have clients that are long-standing, and the renewals are generally, like Ken mentioned, competitive. And even if claims are high, the carriers do work with us, and we have the flexibility to make modifications to the benefits, such as co-pays, to make it fit within your budget most times. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone. And Garrett, I must thank you and Jake and the IIB on behalf of Brown & Brown. We are so grateful to be a gold member, part of the organization, and really appreciate your efforts organizing today's, we hope, informative webinar. And we appreciate it. And I needed this after the Jets lost last night, terribly, you know. So.
Thank you so much, Dan. This was incredibly beneficial. And we will send around the deck and the contact information for all you guys after the presentation. So, if there's any outstanding questions, please feel free to follow up. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Have a nice day. I did?
Yep, oh, you're here, here, all right.
Hell yeah.
Okay,
Is everyone off?
well, I don't know, I'll just leave, though, I think we're safest to
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, I'll give you a call, sir, is that good? But Garrett, thank you